Hey everyone, it is time to review Armor Core seats. These kinds of mech ideas have always attracted my attention, from the well-known series like Gundam to the obscure side like Vanguard Bandits. But it is also true that I didn't know about Armor Core until this game was announced, and the idea was to play it when it was launched. However, Bandai Namco store doesn't send things to my country, so yeah, no collector's edition for me. It is what it is. For those interested, you don't need to play previous games. Despite being the 6th entry, it is a new journey. And as usual, after finishing the game, let's check the story, gameplay, graphics and music. So let's begin. The first thing worth saying about this game is that it works in a similar way as Dark Souls, with the only difference that here you will listen to multiple dialogues. In other words, I do recommend to finish it at least 2 times, so you can grasp in a better way what the story is all about, because the lore is quite deep. Having to look into logs, some sketches, conversations and little details because they are connected in different ways, but let's not ramble that much. What is the main idea here? You take the role of a 4th generation augmented human, to be precise, number 621. A human detached from emotions, cause your brain was pretty much fried because of the augmentations. Now, you're getting sent into a planet named Rubicon, a hellish place that has witnessed what human greed is capable of. Here the precise target is coral, a kind of energy that works in many ways, being used as food, drug, data conduit, among other things. So yeah, before you got here things took a sour turn, and well, few survived, while others had to leave the planet. However, it was thought that the coral pretty much burned in that incident. Nonetheless, some of it was found time later, and as you guessed it, previous augmented humans came here to lay the foundations, so you can wrap things up. Of course, the real plan isn't told but until way later. In any case, after landing, the main objective is to find a license. Not because you're illegal, but because you will be able to operate as a mercenary for different corporations with different agendas. I find it funny that even when some galactic corporations want to keep things under control here, to avoid committing the same mistakes, other big corporations are like, yeah, PCE manuts. So after getting a license, your handler, Walter, just throws you around into different jobs trying to make a name, working as a kind of double agent, helping some corps while also searching for coral. Soon enough you find a promised place, where for better or worse there was a coral surge, something like a little spark, where 621 pretty much lost consciousness and got a waifu to live into his mind or something along those lines. Air, a Rubiconian, who made contact with you.
Please, you must wake up. Before your consciousness is forever scattered in the coral flow.
From here on out, it is going to be a constant back and forth between corporations, agents with 2 lives, and salty mercs who grow to hate you. Of course, you will be the ultimate machine to beat the ass out of everything in front of you. At the end, 3 routes are presented, where you can decide for different outcomes. To me, the most ironic was the one where you don't want to live with a high level of schizophrenia, and I know it is hard to take that pill to stop hearing things, but it is for your own good. The moment she said that she wanted to live inside of you was like, oh no. Leaving dumb jokes aside, after getting a skill check in my first route, I will say it was a really good story. A quite sad story indeed, or perhaps that is my interpretation. In any case, beating the ass of a salty merc is the best. The story gets a 9. Perhaps the only detail is that you will have to find some files here and there to then sit for several hours trying to have that whoo moment. Gameplay-wise, Armor Core Seeds is a game where you will jump into many missions, with a wide variety of ideas, but before diving into specifics, and continuing with the difficulty thing. In general, I could say it is slightly hard, 1 or 2 tries for several mobs, until you find your imaginary friend, Ibis, and pretty much the last boss of each route. To me it would be in general a Seeds Chiles de Árbol out of 10, but those specific fights could be like 7 habaneros out of 10. I cannot really say that you will win by luck, you need to understand what you're doing, so expect to get moped for a while. Everything is going to depend from your skills, understanding the enemy patterns, and the kind of AC you're using. It is fair to mention that I was brute forcing my way in the first route, so for the love of God, lock the target. Don't be a moron like me trying to manually seek the enemy. Sure, it works and you can do it for a while, but when they just disappear and reappear behind you, most likely you will struggle, at least with a controller. Now, I didn't know what I was getting into, but after beating the first enemy, leaving with some points, this was my honest reaction. And through the story, that kind of emotion repeated several times in escaping scenes, fighting in the arena, or while overcoming some of the aforementioned challenges. For the most part, the game will throw simple quests like gathering certain pieces of information from here and there, beat specific enemies, escort allies, defend facilities, and so on. Well, the main idea is simple. I love the wide variety of journeys, and how some of them can be like, oh Jesus Chrysler. Of course, well, you get the idea of the controls and how to avoid the stuff. That is the reason why these missions could be considered slightly harder. And in general, at the end of the stage, you will find a boss, or something along those lines. Those encounters are the main dish of this game. The rush of adrenaline, getting to see some gimmick enemies that turn brutal once they get at 50%, and having to manage, in some cases, 2 enemies at the same time is what I love the most. Sure, some scenarios are fascinating, but there was a point where I was wondering, what is going to be the next enemy? What is going to be the next challenge? In any case, the most important thing is your AC. Now, I don't have that many recommendations. In general, I love tanky roles, like in Monster Hunter with the lance and things like that. However, here I had this feeling like, maybe it is not going to be a good idea. So I chose something kinda fast, but without turning it into a piece of paper. In any case, what I can recommend is, finish every training, and get an idea of what kind of gameplay you want to have, because the level of customization here is extraordinary. So play a bit around with some parts, and while the game may pop an image saying something like, "Eh dude, maybe your AC isn't for these kinds of fights," the truth is that once you get what you're doing, it is possible to throw some random mambo jumbo and make it work. So it is interesting to experiment, considering that for each role there are different ways to assemble things. And with that, we could wrap things up for the gameplay. Yep. It is a quite short game that can be finished in like 15 hours, but I believe it has an amazing replay value because of the number of things you can do. Armored Core 6 was a lot of fun for me. Its gameplay is a 10. I tend to play slow-paced games, but it is also true that sometimes I crave for these kinds of fast-paced journeys. In the graphics section, I check glitches, performance, aesthetics, and other visual ideas. This is the PS5 version of the game, and there were no problems. It didn't stutter, crash, or something in detriment of the experience. Maybe what I could recommend is try to play without much light, cause in general the game is kinda dark, and there are many details you might miss. On this front, my only real complaint is that this game could have benefited much more from some extra cinematics. Yes, it is true that you will see amazing things, but maybe they could have thrown a couple of fights, or something like the trailer, just to set the mood for certain parts, because most of the story is explained through simple conversations, files, and other descriptions. So here's where some cinematics could have delivered a better taste at the end. Nonetheless, for the few scenes or videos, what I love so much is that the level of detail is simply gorgeous. As a mechanical engineer, it was fascinating to see how they didn't go for the classic idea of attaching propellants in the back and that's it. And that is easy to notice because of how the ACs move sideways. Yeah, I don't want to get exquisite with realism and those things. I mean, it is a game, but some of those details definitely do wonders in these kinds of settings. And in general, there is a gloomy and fascinating aesthetic through the journey. Cities destroyed, facilities barely holding together, and lots of explosions. To me, the graphics are naked. This is a good looking game worth checking out. And last but not least, the music. The main composer is Kota Hoshino. Seems like he is well known within this IP, as he has worked in several entries, as well as other things within From Software. Now, most of the OST will fall under the category of ambience. There are many tracks that set the mood for what is being presented, and the rest could be said that it is a combination between some techno, industrial, and electronic rhythms. Within the game, these tracks do wonders. Plenty of them are quite enjoyable, or at least I believe they will be in my memory for quite some time, as I had to listen to some several times. Maybe not my preferred OST, but it does a good job. Nonetheless, what I loved so much were the sound effects. I don't tend to blast many video games, but this is one of those cases where the room had to be closed, and it turns into a really immersive experience. I will give it another 8. The general OST of the game is really solid. Armored Core Seeds final score is an 8.7. It was a really good experience, but I cannot recommend this game for everyone. The difficulty would be the main stopper, but if that is not a problem for you, then by all means give it a try. It is one of those fast-paced action games you need to try every once in a while. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.